have we have we passed an optimum point in the progress of civilization?
Human beings will always gravitate towards what makes our lives easier. The consequences of that in the future, I don't think it's something we can easily tell in the present.
Again, this argument of making things better, we actually
Sorry,
need
say again.
strife to function. It seems like we are trying to reduce the amount of strife in our lives. Maybe there's an optimal amount of strife you need. There's a situation you'll be in now and you don't have so many problems and then it starts becoming a problem.
At what point could we say that, okay, if we had stopped at this point, now at this point in the history of humankind, we would have solved our basic problems without really creating more?
What if that point of ignorance is actually the more advantageous point? What if we are even the ones that are now beyond redemption?
So, in the 1980 movie, The Gospel's Be Crazy, the narrator, in trying to distinguish between the lives of the Kalahari Bushmen and the modern day civilized man that was living in Botswana at the time, said this: only 600 miles to the south is a vast city, and here you find civilized men. Civilized man refused to adapt himself to his environment. Instead, he adapted his environment to suit him. So he built cities, roads, vehicles, machinery, and he put up power lines to run his labor-saving devices. But somehow, he didn't know when to stop. The more he improved his surroundings to make life easier, the more complicated he made it. So now, his children are sentenced to 10 to 15 years of school so they can learn how to survive in the complex and hazardous habitat that they were born into. An important event in the movie, which is very relevant in this conversation, is the introduction of the Coca-Cola bottle, which a pilot threw away from his aircraft as he flew over the Kalahari Desert. Now, Key, a bushman, found it, and since it was the weirdest but also the hardest substance he had ever seen, it proved to be very useful in the clan, but because there was just only one, it caused a lot of strife and conflict among the clan members, which made Key embark on a journey to find the ends of the earth to throw the bottle away. And this actually sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Now with that said, let's get into it.
Festita Dibe, aka Mr. Dibs. Say hi.
Hello. Hi,
And cool, good. And our other guest is Victor Diaka. Victor, say hi.
Hi.
Yeah. All right, welcome. So I think right off the bat, what I'm going to do first is to question the premise of the narrator. So at the point where he said humans don't know where to stop, yeah. So the question is, was there a need for us to stop?
I don't even know how that question would work. So
Okay.
I don't think if there was a need, it was never apparent to humans. So I don't think it was apparent to humans. So when you say humans never knew where to stop, but yeah, it's probably right. But I don't know whether the assumption that there is a where to stop exists, so to speak. So I don't know if that's valid, and I don't know how he could have known if there was a way to stop. So I think he's making this assumption that we've probably gone too far, but I don't see much basis for that assumption. That's how.
Okay. Victor.
Yes, I think yes, it's largely an assumption, but then I think it's I don't know how to say this now. I think it's a valid assumption, or I think it's an assumption worth considering, that there was possibly an optimal point for this whole thing, even if it's just based on mathematics. I think it's an assumption worth considering that there's probably an optimal point for population growth. Let me put it that way, for the human population, maybe which goes hand in hand with civilization anyway. But then, in terms of population, particularly, I think mathematically, it's an assumption worth exploring that there's an optimal point for it.
Okay. Beyond just population, What about like technological advancements? Because his point wasn't even really about population growth. It was that humans we are making their lives so complex that they did not know when to stop, and that became a problem. So beyond that, technologically speaking, do you think that that is something that would have that makes sense?
I don't think you can totally separate the two. Like I don't think you can actually separate civilization from population growth. I think many things that are actually done are in response to human needs, and human needs grow with the human population. So I don't think like maybe there could have been like five people, like, for instance, we would still need like chat GPT, or we would
Okay.
still need like a machine that an assembly line making cars. Do you understand?
Okay.
So
Yes.
I don't think it's something that you can separate. I think the population is like a major driver of this thing. So you cannot really separate population growth from civilization.
I don't know if I agree. And what I don't agree on is precisely that population is one problem, all right?
Okay.
And human beings try to solve their problems. That's how technology grows. So even if we were static population, let's say there were just 10,000 people in the world, okay? These 10,000 people would always try to make their lives easier. So it wouldn't really matter. Like I don't see if there were just 10,000 people in the world existing, we'll still probably want to use people. All right.
Okay.
We'll still probably want to. It's just that civilization will just go in a different direction, but technology will still improve regardless. I don't know if you know what I mean. It just might not. We might not improve technology that handles the particular problem of population growth or that has to respond to population growth, but we would still try to develop technology to solve the new problems we find. You get population growth might just not be one of them. So let's say we're 10,000, but we're just 10,000 people in the world, but these 10,000 people spread across multiple continents. I still think we'll still develop the sort of transport systems we have, and maybe the sort of communication systems we have. Do you get? Because that's the
Okay.
problem we're trying to solve. The communication problem isn't necessarily a problem of population as much as it's a problem of distance and the need to get information, okay, across faster. So I don't think population growth is that strongly tied to technological advancement. I don't think so.
Victor.
Yeah, because if there are just 10,000 people in the world, there could be simpler solutions than trying to invent applications. So it might, how do I put it? So instead of like laying a pipe, what's this thing they call all these pipes that are being laid through the sea and all that? Do you understand? Like, wouldn't it be easier to just relocate people who are in a particular place to a different place such that maybe there's no need for all those pipe laying? I don't know if you understand. So
Yeah.
it's that thing. It's that thing about what is optimal. That's the question. So what is optimal? So if it's not only about a number or let's say a level of technology advancement, it's not just okay. So it's not like we are saying, let's say we invent, for instance, the telephone came, for instance. So the telephone came before electricity came before car and all that. So it's not like I don't think the argument is that okay, maybe the optimal point was just do electricity, just do telephone, electricity, and then stop and don't do cars. Do you understand? So, so I think it's more of like what would have been an optimal. So, any develop because even if you're developing like technology, it's more about okay, what's the optimal population? What's the optimal solution to this? Even if we are 10,000 people, and we have a problem of okay, let's say we need to communicate and all that. If we are aware enough of people who are, let's say, in a particular region where we need to communicate, the question now becomes, okay, at the end of the day, is trying to solve the problem of communication. What would have been more optimal? Do you understand?
Okay.
So I'm not saying it as okay. I'm not saying it as we check the way things have progressed and say, okay, this is the optimal point. The way I'm seeing it is that a lot of things would have been considered in achieving that optimalism. I don't know the word to use. I don't know if I'm making sense. So a lot of things
Okay.
coming. So the technology wouldn't have progressed the same way it has progressed now if the population were different. I don't know if you understand. So if you look at the movie now, if you look at the movie now, for instance, the narration was that the narrative was that those guys were not aware that people were somewhere else. Do you understand? Now that would affect like how they solve their problems. That would mean that there are a couple of things that they would have probably invented if they are aware of people in a different location than them not being aware. Do you understand?
Okay.
So it's all factored into that optimalism, or I don't know the word. I don't actually know the noun for that thing. So do you get my point? So all those factors would have factored the number of people that we are trying to solve that problem for. The number of things that we are going to be interested in. I just think, like the example of Google, for instance, okay, that maybe we would have still needed Google. Would we really have needed? I don't know. I just think that I don't know how to explain it. I don't see how. Okay, you even use 10,000. That was even a big number. Let's use, for instance, the story of Noah and how after the whole flood, they ended up with just him, his wife, and then was it 3 boys? And the 3 boys had wives, something like that. I think they were 8.
Thereabouts.
So so like, I don't see how, for instance, 8 people in the world would need Google.
Okay.
Do you understand? That's yearning for information. So that's the way I'm seeing it. Like it would have, when we're talking about an optimal point, is an optimal point in all these factors. Like they cannot really be separated. I don't think that 10,000 people would have the same problems as 1 million people. That would drive them to still go ahead and develop the same solutions that 1 million people could develop.
It's like saying the same thing. Like what I said was that it's not about, because you tied technological advancement and population growth, and I was saying that those two things are separate. So even if 10,000 people are developing a different kind of technology, they're still making technological advancement. It's just that they're not making it in the direction that the needs they have are not the same needs 1 million people have. So let's say no, and there are 8 of them, all right? They will still advance their technology. It's just that they don't have the need to communicate over long distances. So they might not develop that sort of technology. They'll develop something else. But the point is that regardless of how the population is growing or not growing, technology is still advancing. Do you get? So whenever you say whether there is an optimum point, like, because from what Daniel first started, like the narrator said he didn't know if he had gone too far. That question will still be relevant. You still wonder if these 8 people have gone too far or not. Even if they were 10,000, you still wonder whether these 10,000 people have gone too far or not. If they were 1 million, you still wonder whether 1 million or 8 billion, as we are now, have gone too far or not. Because either way, technology will still advance. That's the point I was making. I was making a point that population and technology are not necessarily tied together. Do you get? Technology will still advance either way. It might just advance differently based on what needs the people have, if you get me.
If there were 10,000 people, you're saying there will still be an optimal point?
I'm not saying there will still be an optimal. All I was countering at that point was tying population to technology. Technology will still progress either way. Point is there an optimal point? I don't know if we have any basis to know what an optimal point is. And even if we reach that point, whether we would even be able to recognize it. Do you get? Understandable? Yeah, that's it.
So is it more like something that you realize when you have passed it, so to speak? Because at that point, the movie was released like in 1980, yes? And he's looking at like the civilization. He's looking at the city, saying that they have not realized when to stop because they are now making their lives more complex and more complex, and then you are having to send your kids to sentence in the word to use sentence your kids to 50
Yeah.
years of
To 50 years of school. Yeah, I heard that.
exactly just to understand the complex life that you which you have created because you have refused to adapt to your own surrounding.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so there's this thing people do where okay, no, fair enough, it's a movie, so the narration seems a bit biased to the hippie lifestyle where you're living in nature. I think that was sort of where his bias is. However, there's something you just said, which is an optimum point, something that we realize after we've passed, and I think that's probably true. Okay, like most
Okay.
things that we can say the peak of so and so, we tend to know the peak years after. All right,
Okay. Okay.
years after we have met a crash. Okay,
Yeah.
in the moment of when the thing is peaking, I don't think we know that we have reached the peak. I don't even think we know that we have passed the peak shortly after we've passed. I think it's one of
Yeah.
those things that you look back in retrospect. For instance, the 2008 crash.
Financial bubble.
Okay,
Crash,
yeah.
rather.
So those who were living in the moment, many of them, didn't know that they were living at the peak of it. Okay, and
Okay.
the bubble was about to burst.
Yeah.
It's usually in retrospect, and those who knew, the only way those who knew or those who were able to predict that they were at the top of that cycle would have been able to do that by looking at historical stock prices and the historical markets, the market history. You get to see similar peaks, okay, and say, okay, this looks like what it was in the 1920s, just before the Great Depression, and make inferences from there. You get. I don't know if we have that level of data for technology to know when we've reached optimum technology, if you could use that word.
Okay.
So from what we know, we've never known a rise and a fall of technology in history. We've sort of known a rise and rise and rise and rise and rise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The rise of AI now, for example. Yeah. So
Okay.
there are calls to that okay, let's call this thing that we can see how this thing is going to be a disadvantage moving on. Okay. Some are saying jobs are lost, some are saying it's gaining sentience and controlling blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. So we are at a point where we are potentially seeing the downsides to this thing. But it does not look like we can stop it. It does not look like we're going to stop it. Do you get? Isn't this like a point where an example of a time that we are living in the central moment, but we are unable to really put a stop to it if it's a problem?
I don't know if we're there. I don't know if we even can recognize that we're there. I think what's happening is a lot of us are making certain assumptions, which are fair, but forgive me, but I think a lot of those assumptions are based on the sort of the narrative we've had. So the literature we've read, the movies we've watched. It's always good TV when AI destroys the world. It's a good thing. There's a fight to be had. There's a hero. There's a villain. It has everything for a good story. It could well be that we develop AI, and AI only ends up being something that helps us. Do you get?
Okay.
And that's all it is. Do you get? It just ends up. There might just be that, and this is might. So we're entering territory we've not charted before. So it might just end up being that we end up with AI or we end up with robots, and it's just stuff that helps us all the way till we die. Another example is like, let's say aliens contact us, all right? So all our movies and all the stuff and our stories tend to be aliens contact us, and then they want to take over Earth, and then we fight, and the hero shows up and saves the day, or they kill us all. That's the narrative. And there's something about narrative. It's sort of we move on in life with this sort of baggage of what could be. Okay, but it could just well be that aliens contact us and we end up being friends. and we go to another planet and have holidays and stuff like that. So we don't really know. I think anybody who is telling you AI will get sentient and it will be dangerous or it won't be dangerous doesn't really know what will happen. They're just
Making
speculating
assumptions.
at this point. Human beings will always gravitate towards what makes our lives easier. All right. So
Okay.
that's just that. The consequences of that in the future, I don't think it's something we can easily tell in the present. So,
Okay. Let me ask you a question in contrast, in relation to Key, who is the protagonist in the movie. The Gospels Be Crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
So, in his own case, when the bottle was sent, first of all, there's a significance that holds for me because God sent only just one bottle. He didn't send plenty, so there was scarcity. So he had to share it between. It had to be shared amongst his family. Yeah, and then he realized that this supposed good thing that is, solving our problems, that is helping me, make music, that is helping me to. It was the hardest thing that they had ever seen. Yes, so it was solving a lot of problems for them. Yeah, so he had the presence of mind to say and throw this away because this, as much as it has served me, has also brought a lot of pain to my family.
I think it's also a reflection of maybe his mindset or his personality or his values. He was weighing the peace of his family against whatever problem that bottle was solving. That's another thing again that I got from because he could easily have used that bottle to lord over his family, given that it is scarce or it is one person that can use it at a time, that kind of thing. So he could have actually
and he got it actually. He was the one that picked it up.
Do you understand? So I think his problem was when he now felt something that should go and started causing problems. So like I said, it's now a matter of also what you're prioritizing or what you want to preserve. So I think it's also a reflection of his values or his personality or his mindset about the choice he now made to go and throw it. It was really solving problems for him. It looked like the guy wasn't comfortable with the fighting. And for him, that weighed more.
He didn't even try to make some laws. Let's not even forget even trying to lord over them. He didn't even try to make some laws like these treaties that you say that people signed today, countries signed today. He didn't even try to make treaties and say, okay, you take this time, you take it for this period of time, and then you give it to this person for this period of time. He didn't even care. It was like in his head, this is a problem. We don't go around this problem. Let's eliminate this particular problem and go back to what we are used to.
What came to my mind was in the same way that guy, he's ignorant. He has a Coke bottle which he doesn't understand. And so he's calling it an evil thing or whatever have you. I think that's sort of similar. It's analogous to how when we come across new technology like the latest thing in town now, AI, we have all these things we attribute to it, how it could be evil or it could be good. But the truth is that we really don't know and we really don't know where to go.
Victor, isn't that ignorance a good thing? Isn't that fact that he does not know whether this thing is going to be beneficial? It was beneficial already, but he understood that because of what his preference, his scale of preference, he was able to now realize that okay, I prefer the peace that I have to whatever good this thing is going to do for me. I prefer the peace and harmony that my family has over that thing, what that thing would do.
Yeah. Like to him, the harmony was more important than the good it was doing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a call he could make. That's his call. Might not necessarily be our call as a bigger society.
Yes.
You get as a bigger society, our call might some people are going to lose jobs. Too bad. They've lost their jobs, but I can get what I want quicker. It's what it is. It's like I don't even know how to. There's not justifying to it. It's just at that point, what's important to us is the ease of information we can get and how it helps us perform our tasks quicker.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Because who are these?
Victor, you're laughing.
Because who are these us? Like who are these us that say, okay, some people are losing their jobs. Okay, what is important to us? Like that's what I'm finding interesting.
Us is-
It's just like this. Let me give you an example. It's just like this Naira redesign thing.
Okay.
And then whatever it is
Okay.
that was their reason for them to do it. Let's go with what they said that
Yeah.
they were trying to handicap some kidnappers and people that were going to buy votes and all. Now we were all suffering. So I can imagine that a group of people somewhere just said, they are suffering, they're too bad. Like, do you understand? So usually what am I imagining? I'm trying to imagine the group of people. Like what I'm finding interesting is that apparently group of people now decide, okay, what is important to us is that okay, this technology solves our problem. Some people are dying about it. Too bad. Like there's this thing about when so like I don't know whether they are the ones making decision or they are the ones that is favoring that they now say okay, too bad for the rest. Do you understand? So I'm trying to because anyway, okay, I don't want to like derail this whole thing, but it's just like there are some contexts where we talk about people, we say something is for the people. And there's some context where we come and now say, I went on a effect, too bad. What matters to us is this. It just makes me laugh anytime because I now start wondering, okay, like who is the included?
Who are those making decisions and all this?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's just about the. Okay, so first of all, just a quick question. There's this analogy used about somebody choosing to be treated by a 2022 trained or be a 2022 up to date doctor versus 15, 20. Can you imagine? I know there's a problem with imagining things sometimes, but let me just put it. Can you imagine that choice could possibly be an ignorant choice? Is there any possibility?
In what sense?
Even if it's a far chance, that the guy who is choosing, because just like you said something about Key's perspective on the whole bottle thing, how he was acting out of ignorance. Now, do you think that modern people could possibly be making modern choices out of ignorance?
Yeah, I already alluded to that when I talked about our fears with where ChatGPT is going and where AI is going. ChatGPT is slowly becoming like the word for AI now, and I don't like
I swear.
I just noticed that instead of saying AI, I'm saying ChatGPT a lot, and it's not the only thing. So there's that level of ignorance in that we don't. The ignorance, it's possible. Let me just go to that. Yeah, it is possible.
So I think even where Victor is even coming from is that it's not even against it; it's even for it. Like even for the technology, that they can be making that decision for AI, for example, to continue based off of an ignorant stance rather.
Ignorant stance in what sense? So okay.
Unless I'm not asking a question.
I don't know. Let me just say something that I might clarify things a bit, may or may not.
Okay.
I think when we say ignorance, we have to start with what we know versus what we don't know. So even the guy in The Gods Must Be Praised, the main character, who's going to return the bottle, if you called him and said, you're doing this from a place of ignorance, he doesn't know he's doing it from a place of ignorance, right? So he's working based on the knowledge available to him at the time, based on what he knows. Okay. And he's acting in good faith. He's making the best decision based on. But we know that his decision is based on ignorance of what the Coke bottle is, because we know a lot more about the Coke bottle than he does.
Is it really? Is it really an ignorance of what the Coke bottle is, or he's using the Coke bottle? The Coke bottle is not Coke bottle to him. He's using Coke bottle for it.
Exactly.
That's
what we're saying. That's the same thing I'm saying. That he's working based on the knowledge he has. So his experience with that Coke bottle is all the things he has used it for, and how people are now fighting over a Coke bottle. And from as far as he can understand, this is a problem. All right? And this thing is an evil thing, based on the amount of knowledge he has. Now, you and me who know what a Coke bottle is, and have seen a Coke bottle, and it's just a Coke bottle, man. Do you get? It's not that big. It's not because you have a different. You have a different
sets of
understanding of what a cook
tools.
bottle is.
We have a
Yes, for all the
different
other, yes,
way of using
yeah, we have a
cook
different set
bottle
of
and
tools.
use
Yes, we
for-
have
for-
better technology to use that
using
word.
for- Yeah, well, yeah.
Yes, to do what he's trying to use that cook bottle for. And so when he say no, it's evil, it's blah, it's like, dude, it's not a big deal, okay? But we can understand it from his perspective. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So yeah, we can because we know a bit more. We can say you're acting out of ignorance. He doesn't know enough, so to him, he's acting up based on what he knows. And the same can be said with us now and new technologies that we encounter. Okay, for things that we know a bit more about, we can compare that to someone who knows less about these things and say this person is acting out of ignorance versus this person has a lot more information about this thing.
Okay, so what if that point of ignorance is actually the more advantageous point? So what I mean is,
Also,
what if we are even the ones that are now beyond redemption because we think we know more? So let me give you an example. If you actually look at a Coke bottle, it's not like a Coke bottle is really like all solutions for us. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So, Anakufu Madishi with Coke bottle. Do you understand?
yeah,
It's non-biodegradable. Do you understand? You might go out to dispose and all that. We can see all the how do I put it? The amount of logistics it even takes to handle Coke bottles and all that. Then the beverages that they even come in. There's also the issue of maybe health issues that it all brings. Do you understand? So now, it's not like the Coke bottle is actually like even all good for us. So now, what if this whole feeling we have that we know more about the Coke bottle and this guy is an ignorant guy? What if it's that we are already absorbed in a way of life where we cannot help but like adopt the Coke bottle and all the problems that will come with it? Yeah, not necessarily that we are better off because of our level of sophistication or our dependence on so-called technologies now. We cannot reject them. So when it comes, we have to take on all it comes with, the problems and everything. Meanwhile, the guy who is ignorant, who does not know more about a Coke bottle than the fact that it's something that is hard that he can use to grind pepper, the guy is now advantageous because he hasn't really, which is why I wish Ebuka was in this thing, because
advantage in what
had a
sense?
conversation like this one time.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just give you a so the advantage is that because he's not as dependent on it yet, his lifestyle is not like the urban lifestyle that is more dependent on Coke. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. We are living a life where we are more dependent on Coke than that guy. Now, what if it's not really an advantage? What if it's that we have become too dependent that we cannot even reject the things that we should be rejecting? Meanwhile, him in his ignorant state, because he is not yet too dependent on the bottle, when he encounters the bottle, the small challenges the bottle brings for him are even enough for him to discard the bottle. He hasn't even gotten to the point where we have gotten to. Like, he hasn't really become dependent on that bottle. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because he has not been dependent on the bottle, he can now reject the bottle, reject those initial challenges, and then even the subsequent challenges that would have come with the bottle that would make him too dependent on the bottle. So I'm saying, like, this stance that we have, that we are better off, like we are better off because we accept bottle, we use bottle, compared to him. Like, are we really sure it is we are advantageous for it? Like, which brings that about optimum. Do you understand? Which brings up the whole thing. Like, if the guy and his family are at the point where they were okay, let me use it to figure out what an optimal situation could look like. So yes, they don't drive cars, but they don't need cars. They don't even know that there's something called a car. Do you understand? So they don't really have the need. It's not like they are missing out. Do you get what I'm saying now?
Okay.
So
Yes.
now, that could actually be an example, or what somebody could argue is an optimal point, because you have not created those needs that you would want to solve with a car. Do you get the point? So you're okay,
Yes.
you're down there, you're not aware of what you're missing out on. Do you understand? And then you're okay, such that even when something as simple as a bottle comes, you still at a point where you can reject it and still
Yes.
be okay with your life. Like you rejecting a car now will look
You've
like
not gone
you're really
far
rejecting
deep
a whole
into
lot
the.
of convenience or solution to problems. But for them, just yesterday we were using stone to grind this thing. Like one day of having this bottle is not enough to make us too dependent on this bottle, such that we can discard it and go back to our stone grinding. So because of that, we don't pass that optimal point. Like my point is that maybe that is what an optimal point will look like. So we don't pass it, where we now get into needs of, okay, we need to create another bottle. I actually say, okay, how do we invent bottle? How do we do this? You get my point? So maybe it's not exactly a disadvantageous point for them to be at. So that is what that optimal thing could actually look like. A place where you're not as dependent on all this technology that we think, okay, we really need now to be doing better. Maybe the need is because the need is already there. Do you understand? So I'm just saying it's just another perspective, another way of looking at it.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I get that. I don't know if, okay, fair play. You can say that that's an optimal point. If our definition of optimal means I am satisfied here, then satisfaction at any point can be optimal. Do you get it? And satisfaction is more a state of mind than it is. My understanding of optimal was not satisfaction. My understanding of optimal is the best solution to your problem. Okay? Not necessarily satisfaction. So I'll give you an example.
Sorry, as an individual or as a group? As an individual or as a group?
As an individual first, and then okay, so we were asking about the world in general, whether we've passed an optimal point. So I have to think of it in the collective terms. Okay? So I would say things like, if our problem is to communicate. So the problem is, I want to call, like right now we're having a video conversation, okay? I want to have this conversation with my friends and I don't want to necessarily leave my house. That's a problem. Okay?
Yes.
Now, one way to solve that problem is to write a letter and send it to Daniel, and Daniel has to write the letter back, and then we'll send the 2 letters to Victor, and we can have that conversation that way. Okay? In a sense, we've solved the problem of having a conversation without leaving my house and without leaving our houses. Okay? Now, your satisfaction with that arrangement, okay, is one thing. You can say, I like this, it's fine for me. All right, I'm satisfied with this arrangement. Now, I don't know if it's the same thing as saying that having a phone conversation or a video conversation like we're having is therefore not better than that. Like, doesn't solve, by not better, I mean solving that problem more effectively. Do you understand? So, I think that this is a more effective solution than sending letters, okay, across.
Isn't this because
of? Regardless of whether we'll be satisfied with a postman that runs around with letters passing them. You get what I mean? So that's where I'm drawing that distinction between. So they could be living in their little bush village and they're satisfied. Even though I don't even think, in reality, I don't think the way human beings work, that there is such a thing as, there's this image that people paint, especially the green hippie kind of lifestyle, where it's like these bushmen or these tribe of pygmies that nobody knows, they're happy and then look at how they were living peacefully, blah blah blah. Reality is not really like that.
We have the gift of retrospect now, which, going back to your point, is saying that these are one of those things that it's easier to see when you have passed. We have the gift of retrospect, and we sort of have a rough idea of how human civilization progressed up until this point. Yeah. So, not having that knowledge now, could we say that, okay, at the point that humans were like hunter-gatherers, or at the point that the agricultural revolution has started, or at the point where globalization had not reached, we are living in clans and that. At what point could we say that, okay, I think that if we had stopped at this point, now at this point in the history of humankind, that we would have solved our basic problems without really creating more, such that even population is factored in, and the technologies and the tools and whatever to solve whatever problems those number of people would have could be also solved at that point.
I don't know if we can do that. The reason I think I don't know where we can do that is at every point. So let's say we cut history in 100-year chunks. Okay? So every 100 years we take a snapshot, and every 100 years we take a snapshot. I don't think that in general we see a past that is better than our present. Better in the sense of a more effective, the technology we have is generally more effective than what we had 100 years ago. So I don't think we've reached the point where we look at the past. But maybe that we have reached that point, perhaps, somewhere during the Dark Ages, and they could look back at the classical times and say they had something better in the past. Okay? But in general, when we pull out, when we zoom out at it a lot more, we kind of see that dip happen and then see a rise continue. Okay? So, so there was the Dark Ages, so to speak, and then there was a Renaissance and industrialization happened. Now I think we're more, technologically speaking, we have something a lot better than what we had in the classical era. Right?
Yes.
So,
like generally speaking, in terms of like progress of technology, not necessarily on the impact it is having. I'm talking about the impact for everybody. Like on the impact on if you pull out one person at random. Okay, you in Nigeria, you have it now. You pick out a Daniel in Enugu, Nigeria today. What you have available to you is a lot better than kings in the classic era would have killed to have what you have. The kind of entertainment you have, the kind of health care you have, the kind of ability to communicate that is available to you, everything, almost not the kind of the quality of food that is available to you, and the amount of labor that you have to make to get that food. It's a lot better. It's a lot better. Isn't that in retrospect like more like it's not like the king there was like feeling like, okay, I need to communicate with some other king in China or Mongol and feeling like, okay, I can't do this thing. Is he feeling that loss that you are characterizing as best, or is it because you already
so it's not So like I said, the difference between satisfaction and what is better. You get? He could have been satisfied writing a letter, sending it with someone who will now ride on a horse all the way to the other king. Who chances of that letter getting to the other king is 50-50 because someone might relay him and go like kill him. Alright? So these are the things he has to worry about. In fact, and this privilege was available to only him and to other nobles. The common man didn't have someone to write and send letters. Do you get?
But probably the common man did not have other people that he needed to communicate in a long distance.
Oh yeah, he probably did. He just didn't have a way to fulfill that need, and I'll tell you why. So the common man probably had a brother who traveled to another country, but he made up because he didn't have a means to communicate with him. He assumed that the guy has died. If he sees the guy in under 20 years, thank God he came back. Do you understand that kind of thing? So it's that the common man at that time may have wanted to travel from Enugu to Soka. Like if you have to go to, like in those days, I know, not, let me just shift come closer to our time. It's like 100 years. You have to, people would walk from, my father told me that his grandparents, they would walk, literally walk from Nigeria to a place in the Cameroons, or a place in, like very far out. Do you get? Like from Imo, what we now know as Imo State, to somewhere inside the Cameroons to go and buy something and bring it back. So that kind of journey, might take them a week to get there, buy the things they're buying, and take them a week or even more, okay, to come back. And these same things now, with a phone call, you can get them in your house in a matter of hours or a day. We can argue that the solution we have now to that problem is a better solution. Were they satisfied with it because they didn't have other options? Probably. Okay?
Okay, yes.
What we have now is a better option. However, maybe what we have now, because we're going to have to drive a car and there's going to be CO2 emitted into the atmosphere, that's a new problem. Okay? But the solution we have to one problem. So, problem one, problem A has been solved. In solving problem A, you now found that there is a bug here. Okay? And now have to solve problem B. Do you understand? But it doesn't take away the fact that problem A has been solved better than how it was solved before.
Granted. Granted. But let me take you back to the movie and Key.
Okay.
The fact that the bottle was beneficial, was better than what they had, is not disputed. The point is that he saw that this would create more problem. Yes. So just because we can optimum doesn't even have to be that it's done better. It just has to be that if we stop here, we don't create more problems. We don't make things more complex moving forward.
Okay.
So
I
which
get
is why I'm
that.
saying, if you go back in time, where would we, say, let's draw this line here, and then it would be.
And that's a hard question to answer, because at every point you can't tell what problems your solution will bring. However, we can also compare. So let's say that by having this conversation, there is this radiation that comes out of all our devices. That every day we do this, we lose a year of our lives.
Yes.
Okay. Now we have a problem that has come from our solution. Now, what we would do and how we would consider what is optimum is this problem a fair price to pay for this conversation we're having? Do you get?
Yes.
That's how we can now say, okay, see here, so we'll have this phone conversation, or we'll have this video discussion, and it's much quicker, it's much better. But every time we do it, our lifespan reduces, or we fall sick and we have cancer. Then we have cancer for like 6 months before we can do it again. We might now argue that since this is the price you're going to pay for this, it might actually be better to just send letters. After all, we'll stay alive. Do you get? So that's the thing. But if we can do this with minimum cost, okay, maybe what happens is that electricity bill is higher, or we buy more data, and we go, okay, the cost of buying data and the cost of electricity, is it higher than the cost of paying someone? Because the guy who's going to be moving those letters gets paid, and the time it takes him to do all that. All things considered, that's why we can say, okay, this solution is a more optimal solution than the other one. And this has nothing to do with what you are satisfied with.
I understand. I understand. And I think it's worthy to mention that if, for example, communication is a problem of numbers. Yes, and when I say numbers, and the numbers that are spread. But if that does not work, if communication is a problem that has emanated from numbers, we can now say, okay, that part in communication is not the good part to even draw the line. We can shift it back to when, let's say, it was just they were living in clans and in groups, and such that they didn't have that communication distance problem, or they just needed to communicate there. So we can shift that line. If communication is a problem, it's not necessarily about each particular solution, or if each particular problem with each particular solution it has. It's like an overall thing. If there's no work, we can shift it back. And the goal is even finding how far back we can go. Because I think most of these problems are population and distribution and all of that. If that makes any sense.
I don't know how it would not have been a problem at any point. I don't see, based on how the human body works and how human beings work, I don't see any way we would not have continued to increase our population. We're going to reproduce.
Yes.
We're not going to like cage, unless we're going to cage people. You cannot move far. You can't leave your parents' house and can't set up. Even animals left on their own, almost every animal will increase and spread. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's just the nature of our biology to do
but
that.
they typically stay in groups regardless whether they spread or not.
Oh, they do stay in groups, but they spread. If allowed, they spread quite well. They spread enough to even have variations in their species based on how far they spread. Human beings were spreading way before we had some of the very basic technology, and we didn't consider it a problem. It was just the nature of the beast, so to speak.
Yes, so I agree with that. But when they spread, they don't spread as a whole. They don't spread when they spread. Let me use, let's say, a lion for example. Now, if a lion goes out now and creates a pride of its own, maybe goes with a male and a female, a new pride. So he goes with that pride. So they are not like, okay, in their head, this is a new pride. This is not a pride that is joined with the other pride. We might be related, but in their head, it does not click. We have spread such that communication between the two is not necessary. So even if we are mating,
but that's an animal.
Even if you're mating and giving birth to, offspring and all that,
new offspring,
we did not. We still kind of had the presence of mind to want to communicate with the pride that we have left.
True.
And miss them in that such a way. Do you get? It's the human brain.
Okay, so it's the human brain problem. I don't know. Okay, so
you
can actually move on back to become Amweba and Algae on top of the sea, and then maybe we won't have a problem anymore. The problem doesn't get solved once you're no longer aware of the problem. So the nature of the human beast is that we're a sort of beast that communicates with each other and wants to communicate. Okay, hence the problem. That's on base level. Okay, level 1. So on level 1, we're the sort of creature that likes to communicate. We're the sort of creature that will reproduce and spread. So that communication problem was going to be there, and we were going to have to solve it. Do you get? And in solving it, the question now becomes: okay, we've solved it in this way. Does it work? It works. We spread a bit more. It's a bigger problem. How do we solve that? And so technology grows by human beings trying to solve their problems. And I don't see, what I see in the history of technology in general is continuous iteration and continuous tweaking and updating of our solutions, so that now we have generally better solutions than we had in the beginning. Do you get? And I don't see the question of where is the optimal point. I don't think we have anything to indicate where that point would be or would have been. I don't see it.
Okay, Victor.
Okay, I'm here to see that point. Maybe another way to interpret what that statement that guy made about man not knowing, human beings did not know when to stop, could also mean that they will never know when to stop. They will always they lack the ability to stop. They will never know when to stop, whether in hindsight or vision sight or
distant.
You never know when to stop. So I think
fair enough.
Like I said, I was thinking that, in fact, the assumption for me was mostly mathematical. Imago mathematically, again, when I tap Imago an optimal point for people. Given this idea we have that we grew from a small number to a large number, if the idea is that we grew from maybe one person or two people from a smaller number, I imagine that mathematically I get one optimal point. But I don't think it's something that we have the ability to decipher, even in hindsight, because we are not even as aware of history as we are even aware of our own times.
Present.
Do you understand? So, so you even have to be like that much in that time and to even know. So I don't think it's something that we can actually determine at any of looking back, especially us that are alive today. I don't think it's something that we can determine. Again, this argument of making things better and better, we actually need strife to function. Now, the thing is that most of our problems in trying to make things easier and easier and easier, it seems like we are trying to like reduce the amount of strife in our lives. But at some point, you really have to ask yourself, like, okay, there has to be like some, maybe there's an optimal amount of strife you need. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Like, the way you will be, the situation you'll be in now, and you don't have so many problems, and then it starts becoming a problem for you. Do you understand? You find out that okay, you now start looking for strife. You start looking for something to challenge you. So it kind of like gives you the idea again that okay, maybe there is an optimal measure of strife that the human being needs. So even in this argument of okay, technology making things better and better and better, I'm not so sure if like okay, that is even like an argument we can take all the way, because if something making life easier for us, it might not actually be so optimal. It may not even be better. You understand? It might not even be better if we are going with the word better. So it might be like now, okay, considering like he and his family there, maybe we needed to be using stones to be grinding these things such that your day is filled, like you are busy, for instance. Your day is filled, there are no less distractions. So in as much as it is not like the easiest way to live life, but it might actually be like might actually be more optimal for the human being. Now, some of these inventions or some of the technological advancements were also not necessarily to solve like an overarching problem. Let me explain. Some things we use now were actually developed and then the need was created. It's not like there were applications for this thing as a solution. People were so satisfied with what was going on that they didn't even imagine like, okay, this thing could be better. Do you understand? Until somebody now goes and creates it and then comes and
brings a bottle.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that even happen like that. Actually, many of these things are commercialized. That is how they happen. So we create them, do you understand? And then we sell them. So we actually sell them to people. We actually like, okay, convince people that they need this thing for them to even buy it. So some of them are not even like, maybe there's this major agitation need this thing and all that. So that's the thing about human beings.
I feel that the spread of human beings is one of the problems that causes this. Like, and even before the spread of human beings, I think the nature of humans prevents them from even knowing when to stop. Our brains really a blessing or a curse.
So, what do you think? Do you think human beings have overdone it? Or did the writers of the movie have way too much to drink? Now I'll be in the comment section reading your comments and responding. Now on the next video, we'll be discussing whether the human mind is really a blessing or a curse. And that should be really, really interesting. Looking forward to it. Now make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when that goes up. Thanks for watching. Cheers.